Alright, I have to start the video again. Wasn't recording. So, as I was saying, it's a beautiful autumn's day here. So, it's a little cool, but it's not freezing, which is nice. We've had some pretty cool days recently. So basically what I've got here is a block of wood. And this here is just some non-slip rubber matting stuff. Because I'm going to sharpen this knife here. And I was just showing a little demo here. I've got a bit of scrap paper here, and you can see it's not great. I could probably, so it's just no good at all. So I sharpen my own chisels and knives, and I've been doing it for years, so I just self-taught. So I don't know if you can sort of see, I'll try to put my hand, it's really hard to pick up in the camera, but you kind of sometimes see like a white sort of line going across the blade. When you see that, you can safely be assured that your knife's quite blunt. So what we want to do is basically get rid of that. So what I'm going to do today is actually use some diamond plates, industrial diamonds that have been fine sort of powder, ground up, and then they adhere to this steel plate. So I've got a number of these. So it's not the only way. There are other things people can use. When I first started off, I used sandpaper. So there's a whole bunch of different ones. They look the same, but they're actually different coarseness. This one's the coarsest one I've got. I've got it written on there. You can see there 240. That's how coarse it is, and as it goes up, it gets finer. So like here's this one's here. This one's 1500. I've got more higher than this. You might not be able to see it quite easily from the camera. It's more of a textural thing. You can sort of feel it. So that's this one's finer, and the finer you get, the more sharper the blade gets. So, all right. So basically, I was going to inspect this knife now, and you can sort of see. You might not understand what you're seeing, but it's quite a bit jaggedy. You're looking over all along the blade actually, and I reflect it into the light just so I can kind of see what's going on. And sometimes you can use a magnifying glass if you need to, but I can see with my eye by both reflecting the light and also seeing these tiny little, what I call burrs, where it's tiny little bits of metal that sort of blunt and sort of hang on to the blade. So, and sometimes you get little dings and nicks. I'm just trying to look at this one the best I can. I can't actually see any nicks in it, which is, good. Oh, there might be very minor. So I'm not going to start at 240 because I don't need to cut it back, because 240 is much more aggressive. And might see how we go with this is a 400. So okay, so what we do is a number of ways to sharpen your knife. Everyone's got different opinions about it, as I do as well. So now the way I like to do this, I like to do this when I'm in daylight, because so I'm gonna get this camera a bit more positioned about here, because then I can actually really look at I can feel the angle. This is the only small knife too, and then I can just drag it towards me. You can push it back as well if you want to. This is one method to do it. I mean, if you feel comfortable, you just drag it one way for now if you wanted to. Another way is actually just running it like this. And it's okay. This actually works pretty well. But when I get to finer grits, I generally will then go back into another sort of motion. And I do this with a little bit of pressure, not too much. With a larger knife, I'm not going to do it so much with this one. The idea is that this hand is the one that holds the tilt, and this hand will then put the pressure on the blade, help keep it steady on an angle. But with a smaller blade like this, I find it's not such an issue. Do it a number of times, and you can sort of see it's coming up now. And now let's do the same on the other side. Don't know if some people might not like the sound of this. I find it very therapeutic personally. I really enjoy doing this. I sharpen a lot of people's knives. Oops. Alright, so I'm just going to have an inspection of this. Give a little bit of just very gently pull it through the wood here to take off the little bits of residue left over. You can just you kind of see it anyway. I think you can. Yeah, you can. See those. Trying to make it so you can see it. That's maybe a little bit hard, but you might see, yeah, you can kind of see that grey dark stuff on the top. Sometimes that can just be a bit of the metal left over. Sometimes it can be what's called the burr, which is still attached to the blade. I'm just going to give this a wipe for a minute. All right, let's see how we go. Now I've done that, I can kind of see, yeah, there is a slight little bit of damage there. It's a bit hard to see before, but I can see it now. I'm just going to feel this, and just out of interest, let's have a look at what it's like if we go back to our paper. Already, it's already cut through pretty easily. And, oops, obviously needs more work. That's a lot better than what it was. It wasn't doing it at all before, really. So, but I can still see that this still has. I'm trying to reflect it in the light. You look at the edge of the blade if you can. You can sort of see a white line. If you see that, you know that you still got to do some work. It's a bit hard. It's a bit hard to tell on this camera. So I'm just going to do that now. And the great thing about doing it by hand, well, a number of things. I find it personally quite enjoyable. But even if you didn't find it enjoyable, and you just did it just for you know, for need, you really, in my opinion, you really can't surpass hand sharpening. People often use machines, or they'll go to. Sometimes people pay other people to do it. But what happens is, people go see someone like maybe down at Bunnings in Australia. Sometimes they have at certain locations on a Saturday, every so often they'll have a person come down and sharpen knives and scissors and things like that, and that's okay if they've got the right equipment. But sometimes what they do is they just use like a grinder. Now, it's not going to be maybe particularly popular me saying this, but I've spoken to metallurgists about this, that is really not the way to go about it, because even though it does work, what happens is you can ruin, in fact you do ruin, the tempering on your blade. As soon as you see a spark, you're pretty much, depending on, you know, well, you pretty much have done some damage to your blade. And so those machines and stuff, if you really care about your knives, I certainly would not recommend that at all. Just would not go to one of those people. So I said it might not be popular. This is how it is. So now we'll go to a 600, upside down there. Upside down, just like Mr. Squiggle with I can't remember, it was Blackwater. Mr. Squiggle used to say, I think it was Mr. Squiggle. Anyone remembers that? So anyway, doing it by hand, yeah, you get the skill of it, but also because it's going at the speed I'm sort of going at, it means that you're not going to actually have that problem with what I was talking about with some of these more aggressive machines and stuff. The other thing too is people often have the ones at home, the self-sharpening ones, and they, although they're not as damaging in regards to, you know, ruining the tempering and things like that, they absolutely massacre your blade. There's so much damage, and they don't really sharpen them that well. Like, it's okay, like it's better than a blunt knife, I guess, but again, I wouldn't recommend that. I'd really look at. There are people who do actually offer, you know, generally all over the place, you know, hand sharpening. It's something that I do as well. It's I do it for pleasure, and yeah, but it's not something I've tried to turn into a full-time thing in any kind of way. Also, I mean, I see it as a very meditative type of practice. So, and you'll see too with some of the great Japanese chefs, they'll sharpen their own knives a lot of the time. Well, maybe not all of them, but they do that. And from what I'm told, a lot of them actually do that daily. Maybe after they've had a, you know, big thing the day before. All right, so that's 600. What we're going to do is move these away. Let's get back to our paper here. Alrighty, that was no effort really. So you can see as we're going, it's getting sharper and sharper. Let's see if we can see anything with the blade now. I'm going to put it in front of the camera here, but I don't really know whether it's. Yeah, I can still see a slight burr on there. You're probably not going to be able to see it with the camera. I'll get there though. I will get that out. All right, so that was 600. Now, what do we got? We've got an 800. So yes, with the Japanese chefs, so they use Japanese water stains, which I have, and I'll show you after I've done this. Might not use them this time around on this particular knife. They also need maintenance and care, and I haven't sort of done that with my water stones for some time now, and last time I used them, it goes up to 8,000 grits, the one that I've got. I actually thought that the sharpness kind of went down, dulled, so I have a feeling that I need to do some maintenance work on them. Sometimes you got to flatten them a bit over time, and the same with like these diamond plates. I've got some new ones of these now, and the other day, some I'm still using some of the old ones because they do wear out. And I mean, I guess it depends on the quality too. I mean, I don't buy the most expensive ones in the world. And as I was saying before, you don't even need to purchase blades at diamond plates at all. You can just buy sandpaper. So what I used to do was just get like a piece of glass out of a photo frame, take it out of the frame completely, and then I would stick I'd get wet and dry sandpaper, and then I'd wet it, the glass, and then stick this, then the sandpaper to stick to it, and then I would just use the sandpaper to sharpen. Because same thing, it's just using something that's got a certain coarseness to it, and it really doesn't matter what you use. I mean, you can use anything, and the more, even though it's sort of like coarse, the more fine it sort of is at the same time. If that sort of makes sense. Probably not using the best words right now with that, explaining that, but something has a little bit of texture, reasonably flat, and I mean you can technically use a terracotta pot if you wanted to. It won't be as sharp as obviously a 8,000 grit water stone, but it will work. Okay, so we can look at our blade again. So we'll go back to the paper. And that was just so easy. I put almost no effort into that at all. That's 800. So we got, this is 12. So the old stones that used to be, the people used to use a lot of, and they still do. They're called Arkansas stones. It doesn't really matter what you use. It's just a preference thing a lot of the time. Obviously, as I said, the finer the grit, it doesn't matter what it is. It's going to give you a superior blade sharpness. And so with these Arkansas stones, again, it's another just type of stone. It's you may be familiar with this stuff, maybe not, but it's often recommended that you use oil on those stones as a way of sort of, just again looking for the best word here. I don't use them anymore. Not quite lubricate exactly the stone as you're working, but it's supposed to pick up the slurry. But I did some research on this years ago, and there's a guy I think in the 70s who, oops, years ago. So this is pretty sharp. He was sharpening knives for a slaughterhouse, I think it was. So they noticed that he didn't use any oil on his stones, and I said, why didn't you do that? Because everybody that sort of knew that that's what you did. That's what they thought you should do anyway. And he said, "Oh, it's you get sharper blade." And I said, "Well, can you just sharpen them with some oil?" And we just want to see what it's like. They thought it'd be better, and in fact, they found that the performance wasn't as good. And so they were interested about this. So he went back to doing the dry thing, but then I can't remember the exact story, but I think out of interest, it was just sort of I think that's all it really was initially. Was why is that? So I think they approached a university or something like that, some sort of scientific thing that had an electro microscope type thing. I think that's what they're called. And they had a look at the difference between the blades between one that was a knife that was sharpened with the oil and one without. And at 400 times magnification from memory, you could actually see the blade up close, and you could see how much more aligned the metal was without using the oil. And so the question was, well, why is that? So the theory is, and I think this sounds pretty sound to me, is that if you've got like a oil all over here and you're moving your knife through and there's like creating like a slurry full of like little particles of metal that you can't even see necessarily with your eye, as you bring the blade towards it, even as on a micro scale, you're slamming those particles into the blade. So on a very, very micro level, you can't even see with your eye, it's actually damaging the blade. And although it might seem, look, it's still going to be a sharp knife, but we're talking about getting to sort of more precision sort of stuff here. That's what they found. So I thought that was really interesting. Right. Because metal does have a grain. People don't realise that. So that was, just a moment, where are we up there? That was 1200 again, so going here. It's not the greatest. There we go. Right. So you can see that's pretty easy. Let's see, so I've got in diamond plates, and I can't find them all right now, I have up to 3000. This is 1500. And in a moment, I'm just about to show you the water stains. Yeah, so I've got to be careful there. There's something on there too that was... So I've got to clean these as well, and I have a feeling that these are caught, not, sort of damaging my performance as well. So I can see that already, that stuff I'm picking up. So sometimes I clean these. I've got to dry them immediately too, because they're just a steel that's not, that hasn't, just a carbon steel that's not protected of anything. So if it gets wet and not dried, it will rust. So essentially what we're doing is polishing the blade. Just put it on that angle, and if I had a chisel with me, I'll show you how polished these things can get. Essentially like a mirror finish. Sometimes, especially if you use, like I have, what I'm balancing on at the moment, a piece of leather that I have glued to a block, and I'll put a polishing compound on there, a metal polishing compound. So this is, all right, let's have a look at this. Trying to get this camera to, all right. Oop. Bit jumpy there, okay. Oop. So you can see it's really, so when you remember how it was before, I couldn't even cut it in the thing at all. So here we go, I'm going to show you here, move this to the side. I have this container here, it's got water in it. I think I need a bit of clean out now. So, these are the water stains. This one here is a, so this is 8000. And you can see this actually has a slurry on it. Now what I found is different with this, now I've just told that story about the oil, is funnily enough the slurry on this actually does seem to help. So without the slurry, so it doesn't, you don't seem to get the same performance. So why that is, I'm not really sure. That's the 8000, hang on a minute, I've got the 3000 here as well. Alright, so here we go. Very satisfying. It is for me anyway. Put a bit more water in there. And the other side. No, I think I've said earlier in this video I wasn't going to do this. Anyway, we're here now. It's nice having a break and just enjoying the beautiful surrounds of where I live. I live out in the mountains here. Very lovely. I'm sure you may have heard the birds before. Not only do you hear the birds, you hear the mosquitoes. They're everywhere at times, and I don't enjoy that. But as the weather's getting cooler now, it's they're getting less and less, which is great. Okay, just going to wipe that knife on a piece of cloth here. Let's have a look. Hopefully, as I said, I think these need a clean, so hopefully this hasn't damaged the performance. Anyway, the blade's wet too, which doesn't help. Just a minute. The water on it certainly will affect the sharpness. I'm just trying to get a little bit dry, so what I'll do is start off with this. Oops. So you can still see it's very sharp. Very clean cuts too. This is a very sharp, very cheap knife too. So, yeah. And still, yeah, so. Yeah. So I think you can, oh, it's not even on the camera. Oh, you missed all of that. All right. So you can sort of see. Oh. Oh. It's hard to. This paper's a little. I think it's a little damp anyway. But you can see that it's sharp. I'm just dragging this across. It's really nothing at all. And there's the 8,000, but I'm going to leave that here. I think you get the idea. And going back to my block of wood here, this is leather with a polishing compound on it. Now I don't generally sharpen my knives on here, and I would get all this stuff off. It's probably need to replace the leather actually. You can see that green stuff. That's a polishing compound, but you'd only drag one way anyway if you're going to do it. Do a little bit, because if you drag it this way, you're going to blunt your knife immediately, and you have to redo everything again. So get all back to sharp. So yeah. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. I'll leave that here.